you only get one life, and it's complicated and it's short. And it's funny, a lot of people focus on the big moments in life. And I actually think there are so many small moments that if you optimize those small moments, you could make a real difference. And I think it's really easy today to multitask, not really pay attention, do 12 things at the same time. And so I adopted this philosophy of I'm going to be where my feet are. If I have a bad meeting at 9 a.m., I'm not going to carry that emotion into 10 a.m. I'm going to start over. If I have a car ride with a brand new staff person or consultant, I'm not going to be on the phone doing conference calls. I'm going to talk to that person. If I'm with my kids in a movie, I'm watching the movie.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeanie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation.
Hey everybody, it's Jeanie. Thank you so much for joining me at the Warriors at Work show. Today, I'm talking about leading and living in the now with former CEO of Premier Inc., Susan DeVore. Susan is the former CEO and ongoing advisor to Premier and has over 40 years of experience. Her tenure at Premier Inc. is centered on driving innovation in healthcare and leading the industry through profound change by engaging stakeholders and co-developing solutions that support high-quality, efficient, and sustainable care delivery models. Susan is an industry-leading thinker who has consistently been named multiple times to Modern Healthcare's 100 most influential people and top 25 women in healthcare. She's the recipient of various awards. And one of the things that you're going to quickly pick up is not only is she incredibly smart, she has a learner's mindset, she is heartfelt, she's direct, she has tremendous wisdom, and she's very transparent about her leadership style, what really worked for her, what didn't work for her. We also talk about some of her greatest highs and her greatest lows and where she is now in her life as a new retired person. What does she value? But one of the things that really struck me about this conversation, which I know is going to resonate, is how honest and attuned she is to her value system and her principles and how she sees life. And it was such a refreshing and honest conversation with a really successful, smart CEO. And I know this is going to be a conversation that is going to have some lasting effects, whether you're a 35-year veteran in your career or you're 3 years in your career. This is a wonderful conversation about leading and living. Enjoy. Welcome, Susan, to the conversation. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Jeanie. Happy to do it.
I love the fact that you're joining us from a beautiful, warm climate while I'm freezing in 20-degree weather in the Northeast. It's so nice to look over your shoulder and see that spring is coming soon.
It is wonderful.
So here's where I thought we could start. So you're a CEO who's known for 40 years of experience in the healthcare business. The organization you ran, Premier Inc., is described as inspirational, passionate, socially responsible. And you also created an organization together with an extraordinary team that combines business acumen with innovative thinking. You also talked a lot about having a culture that's very focused on people. So what I want to do is talk about you in that statement, because I'd love for you to first tell us, describe how you see yourself as a leader. What is your leadership brand?
Everything I'm going to talk about today is hindsight. So I didn't actually realize all these things along the way. What I now realize is that I had this leadership style that I would call continuously distributed, meaning I didn't really believe in a top-down leadership style, didn't really totally believe in a purely bottoms-up. But I had this view that if I was kind of in the middle and I was getting constantly perspective, ideas, disagreement, agreement from everywhere I went, everybody I met, every interaction I had, and I was able to distribute the leadership and making decisions out to the people best positioned to make those decisions, that would really work. And so I sort of adopted that leadership style. I used to believe in servant leadership. And I still believe in servant leadership, but I think servant leadership wears people out. If all you're doing is constantly giving. And so I started to believe that two-way servant leadership, where you gave, but you also got in return. You learned from other people. They learned from you. You helped other people. They helped you. And so I sort of believed in this two-way servant leadership where there was this wonderful confusion about who was serving whom. So I guess that's how I would describe it.
Did you ever name it to your team to say, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm operating, this is my expectation, in the way that you just characterized it here?
I never named it. And I actually got challenged on it sometimes, where people would say, why do you always let everybody have opinions? And, we have to make a decision. We have to go. And I used to say, I just think we make better decisions. We make better decisions with multiple perspectives. I didn't put a name on it. They just had to live it, unfortunately, I guess.
The beauty of being the CEO too.
Yeah.
So let's take you back, because I'm curious, when you think about just all that you've accomplished in your career, take us back to that moment when you knew you wanted to be CEO. Like, how did you figure out what were those crucial ingredients that were necessary for you to achieve this?
It's funny. I would first say I didn't know I wanted to be a CEO. When I was a little girl, I was one of 7 kids. I grew up in a big military Catholic family. I was the maladjusted middle child. I was extremely shy. And I was of average intelligence. I made B's and C's, in my early years. And an older sister who was beautiful and a wonderful athlete. And I decided somewhere along the way, and it was about at the age of 14, that I needed to not be shy and I needed to be smart. And my family moved at that time from Pennsylvania down to North Carolina. And I thought, nobody knows me here. They don't know I'm shy. They don't know that I'm of average intelligence. And so I remember distinctly deciding that that's what I wanted to be. Not that I wanted to be a CEO, but that I wanted to be outgoing and that I wanted to be smart. And so I just went to work on that. And from that moment on, I studied, I worked hard, I was social, I was friendly. And I discovered that I liked that and I enjoyed that. And so then I went through my career, college and Ernst & Young for 25 years. Wasn't until I hit about 42 or 40-ish that I thought I actually could be a CEO. And it came about because I had been in healthcare for 25 years and I was asked to lead a non-healthcare, high-growth, middle-market tech division of Ernst & Young. Scared me to death. But I decided to jump off that cliff. And once I did it, I kind of realized, wow, all business is the same. It's about people, it's about sales, it's about revenue, it's about profit, it's about customer service. And so then I did a variety of other things. And in my early 40s, I decided I wanted to make more of a difference. And I decided that in leadership roles, you actually have sometimes the opportunity to make more of a difference. And so that's when I kind of decided I wanted to be a CEO. Interestingly, at Premier, where I had been for several years, when the CEO job came up, they realized that I didn't have a graduate degree. And told me at age 51 that a graduate degree was required. And so at 51, I went back to school for 2 years while I continued to work to get that graduate degree. So my advice to all young women, if you want to be a CEO, is do that back when you're 20, not when you're 51. So I just knew intuitively, I think, that the ingredients were hard work and dedication and listening and teaming and innovating and not being afraid, mostly. Not being afraid to jump off that cliff and break out of that box, whatever the box is that somebody put you in.
How did you face your fears in a way where you made friends with it, but still pushed through? I mean, I'm sure you have hundreds of examples in your career where you had to face your fear, but you talked about it early on when you were talking about your time at Ernst & Young. You were put in a role where you had to deal with fear and overcome it. But I'm just curious, do you have like particular formula or way of addressing it that would be helpful to this conversation?
What I would say is it's very, very scary the first time. And it's less scary the second time, the third and fourth and fifth and sixth time. So that first time you jump off the cliff, you're like, oh my God, they're asking me to lead something that I know nothing about. I've been a healthcare person for 25 years. I know nothing about automotive. I know nothing about .coms. I know nothing about technology companies. And I said, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, I asked myself, what is the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen is you fail miserably and you're embarrassed, but then you go back and you're still a partner and you go back to healthcare and you do healthcare. And so I decided to just do it. I'll never forget the conversation, the CEO of Ernst & Young calling me, asking me to lead this division. It was the worst performing division in the company. He wanted me to turn it around, and it was non-healthcare. I was at a client site, didn't want the client to know I was having that conversation. And so I was in a closet at the client. And I just said yes. And I knew the people in that division, the other partners, weren't going to respect me. They were going to say, she's a healthcare person. She doesn't know anything about this. And then as I did other things, I found out that everybody likes to put you in the box they think you are or they think you belong in. So those high-tech people thought I was a healthcare person, and they said, she can't ever do this. She's a healthcare person. Well, we turned around the division, top 3 performing division. Then they asked me to lead another sector. And then when I came to Premier, which is a healthcare supply chain technology company, they said, well, she's a consultant. She doesn't actually know how to operate anything. And so I had to run one of the divisions of Premier for a while. And then they said, well, she's a supply chain person. She doesn't know anything about being a COO and running the whole thing. So then I became the COO, and they said, well, she's an operator. She's not a strategic person. She couldn't be the CEO. And then when I became the CEO, they said, well, she's a private company CEO. She couldn't be a public company CEO. And the truth is, it's all made up.
Yeah.
It's all made up. Other people make it up. And then if you can sort of withstand the, maybe I'll fail, maybe they won't think I'm qualified, maybe I've got to learn a lot of new things that I don't know anything about. If you can get over all of that, you know, the worst that could happen is you go back to that thing you did before. But that kind of never happened.
Well, it also goes back to what you said initially around your leadership style, around contribution leadership, that puts you in the center rather than at the top or at the bottom. So you're constantly funneling information, discerning, and then that's helping you make choices and decisions. I have to ask, was there a part of you that was like, okay, watch me? Okay, now what? Okay, watch me.
There's definitely that part. But I was pretty conscious not to show that or say that. I was pretty conscious of you have to prove it through your actions, not your drive. You got to prove it. You got to prove it. And it may take time to prove it. And just acknowledge you don't know it going in.
How did you steady yourself going through very ambiguous and unpredictable experiences?
It's funny. There was I'm a firm believer in learning from people all around you. And there was a woman who was a PhD psychologist, and she was actually a consultant at Ernst & Young at the time, and she was on an engagement with me. And I got really frustrated, about some problem we were trying to solve. And she said to me, "Why don't you try loving the issue instead of hating the issue?"
Ooh,
And she said, "Love the problem, love the issue, love that recalcitrant person. Don't hate them. Don't worry. Don't be frustrated by it. Just view it as a challenge." And then I had a guy also who was a leadership coach one time tell me, because I traveled 4 days a week. And he said, "My favorite thing to do in airports when there's weather and all the flights are canceled and everybody's frustrated and everybody's screaming at the representatives. I just like to watch. I just like to watch that and be entertained by that, as opposed to letting the frustration fill me." And so I just decided I needed to enjoy the ride and relax a little bit, chill out a little bit, and try not to let it get to me. I'm a very intense person, so I am a worrier. I am, I'm a normal person in that way. But I had this philosophy always of notes to self, like things I would see or things I would learn. I'd say, remember that note to self, because that's an important thing. And the note to self was relax, chill out, enjoy the ride, love the issue. And I have lots of those notes to self.
I love that. I hear all around leadership conversations, especially when I'm talking to CEOs, I love to talk to them about this idea of being respected versus being liked. And I hear the question more from female leaders, which is interesting. But I'm curious, how did you strike a balance between being respected and liked? And then how do you teach that in others?
It's a really great question. First and foremost, I wanted to be respected. I didn't want to have any job in any place because I was a woman. I wanted to be respected for what I could bring to the table. And as I said earlier, and this again, I don't think was conscious at the time, it's more conscious now. But when I was coming up, which was, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, it was a pretty much a man's world, especially in business and in the big public accounting consulting world. And so I was routinely the only woman in the room, and I was surrounded by men. And as I said earlier, I grew up in a big military family with older and younger brothers and sisters. And so somewhere along the way, I decided that the way I wanted to interact with and be perceived by all these men in this men's world is as their smarter big sister. And so I thought to myself, if people like their smarter big sister, they respect her, they want her opinions, they want to work with her, they trust her, they can have fun with her, they can be real with her. And I didn't want to be treated like their daughter. I didn't want to be treated like their mother. I didn't want to be treated like their girlfriend or their wife. I wanted to be treated like their smarter big sister. So I knew I needed to act like the smarter big sister. And so that's what I did. And it's funny because this is going to be a little counter to, I don't want to be liked. I want to be respected. And it's going to sound weird, but I actually wanted to be loved like a big sister. Because if you love your big sister, you tell the truth and you share and you're vulnerable and you can mess up and you can come back from anger, and you can disagree. And so I had this philosophy that if you really cared about your younger brother or your younger sister, you would behave in a way that would lead you to lifelong relationships, and you would learn a ton, and your life would be fuller. My life. So I had this big sister, smarter big sister kind of way. And when I see and talk to women and men now, I say to the women, dress like, act like, talk like a smarter big sister. And I say to the men, treat her like your smarter big sister. And it just kind of takes some of all those other undercurrents away.
The visual that I was getting when you were describing that is like, wow, there's a lot of family chemistry and dynamics there that you just described. And I think about even how I open this conversation, when I think about the organization that you helped to create, the ingredients are exactly what you're talking about. And there's a humanity to it. There's a realness to it where it's not transactional. Everybody's here to fulfill a function and a job, yes, but we're going to do this in each of our humanity. And I just love that visual. That one, I could see a lot of people going, ooh, big sister, like that.
And there's an attachment that comes to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's not only with employees and coworkers. It's with customers, it's with suppliers, it's with government, a little harder with government, but it's with, it's just a way of interacting with human beings that allows you in, to the truth. And so, I don't know. I don't know when or how I discovered it, but I was searching for a way to fit in, a way to not be an outsider, a way to be heard and respected. And it just kind of evolved over time.
That's beautiful. It's like such a beautiful visual. And even how you're describing it, there's like an energy to it that makes so much sense. I want to switch gears a little bit. I saw an interview you did with UNC Charlotte, and you were offering advice to other women leaders coming up in their career. And you said, make rules that work for you. And I just feel this is so critical if women are truly going to change the corporate landscape. And I would love for you to share an example of when making the rules for yourself was a problem and was really a challenge you had to overcome.
Well, as a consultant and a partner at Ernst & Young, I have traveled my whole life. So I traveled a lot, and I had 3 kids. And I was on a career, mode of progression. And I remember this was in my late 20s. And interestingly, my mom kind of never understood why I wanted to have a career. And she used to say to me, you can't be superwoman. There's no such thing as supermom and superwoman. And I was so determined to prove her wrong. But I actually think she was right. Because I think it is work-life balance is one complicated life, a set of choices, non-negotiables, sacrifices, steps back, steps forward. And sometimes I think people today think it's somehow the employer's responsibility to help you with work-life balance. And I actually think you own it. Nobody's life is like yours. Nobody's spouse, kids, family situation is like yours. So in my early 20s, one of my kids, my oldest, was sick in the middle of the night, 2:00. I'm in there rocking him. He's got a fever and I'm stressing. I've got work, I've got deadlines, I've got this, I've got that. They're going to think, I shouldn't progress because I'm a woman with a sick kid at home, and all those thoughts that we have. And in that moment at 3 a.m., I decided, you know what? This is not going to be a trick question for me. I'm going to actually enjoy this moment, because sick kids are actually precious, right?
Yes.
I'm going to enjoy this moment. I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'll deal with tomorrow. But right now, I'm going to be in this moment. And I'm going to love my baby. And I'm going to do what I need to do for my baby. So what was so weird was the next day I wasn't tired. The next day he was better. The next day, I figured out how to do whatever the work thing is, which I can't remember. I can remember the sickness and the rocking chair, but I can't.
Isn't that interesting?
Can't remember the work thing. And so from that moment on, I decided it was going to be both and. I wasn't going to make it to 100% of the ball games, but I was going to make it to 75%. I wasn't going to be home 7 nights a week, but I was going to be home at least 4. I was going to read books over the phone. We didn't have Facebook, FaceTime, and all that back then. I'm going to read books over the phone. I'm going to bring them a little something from the city I'm in, from the airport, cheap little something from the airport, and then talk about the city I was in. So I just made my own rules. And, I had a spouse who didn't travel, so that made it easier for me. I was lucky enough and could afford babysitters, nannies, those kinds of things. So I'm not like every other woman out there, and I appreciate that. But I just think you have to figure it out, and you have to divide up the responsibilities in a way that work for your family and not really expect your employer to do it. I had some learnings. I had some notes to self from my kids. Back in the day when we had voicemail and we would drive to the beach, the intense Susan would say, "Oh my God, I got a 4-hour drive to the beach with 3 kids in the back. I can listen to my 85 voicemails all the way."
How'd that go?
Until my kids revolted. And I thought, God, they're so right. Why would I waste that 4 hours just doing voicemail when I could actually be laughing and singing and talking to my kids all the way to the beach? So I just made my own rules. No voicemail in the car when my kids are in the car. And so, you just figure it out through hard knocks.
And staying true to your commitments. It's like there's a follow through piece. It's not just a declaration of a shift. Like, you're actually going to do this.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that I have this belief that you say yes as often as you can and no when you really need to. And the yes part is really easy for all of us women. Yes, 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 yes. The saying no part is a lot harder. And I found that you have to say no, not once and not the second time, but the third time. So somebody'd have a deadline, they want you to do something, you couldn't do it, and you'd say, "Oh, I really can't do that." But you offer an alternative, and they'll say, "Oh, I think you can do it. It really ain't going to take that much time, blah, blah, blah." It's like, no, but you have to have an alternative, and you make sacrifices. It's a fool's dream to think that you can be a successful woman in business with kids, with family, with all that, and not make sacrifices. Sometimes I think women don't want to have to accept the sacrifices that they do.
It's definitely hard, and it takes commitment, it takes communication, and it takes the tribe.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also was really fascinated. You shared some great insights with me preparing for this conversation. When you step more into the healthcare space, you saw that healthcare was fragmented and that it was driving the wrong behaviors. And you gave me some great insights there. I'd love for you to take us through some of the critical moves you made to address that challenge.
Yeah, I was in my early 40s when I went to Premier, and I went to Premier because I had been a healthcare consultant for 25 years, helping healthcare companies, drive profit, drive growth, drive improvement. But I wanted something more meaningful. I wanted something that felt like it would make a difference. So I went to Premier, and Premier is this amazing company that sits at the nexus of healthcare providers, hospitals, and doctors, but also suppliers, medical device, pharma companies, all that, government, and all the Medicare and Medicaid things that are happening, insurance companies. So they sat right in the middle of that with a national footprint, 4,000 hospitals, few 100,000, physicians, 2,000 suppliers, all the big pharma, big device names. And I thought, if there's ever a place that you could attempt to transform healthcare from the very fragmented thing that it is to an integrated system. And then I put on my family hat again and said, I'm a mom and I'm a grandma. And what do I want? I want a healthcare system that knows me, has all my records, doesn't kill me, doesn't hurt me, gives me evidence-based medicine. It's actually affordable, and they treat me with a customer experience that I want. So I thought, that's what that I think everybody kind of wants from their healthcare system. So how do we transform healthcare from the inside out? So that's what drove me. For the 18 years I was at Premier, every morning I woke up and said, how do we answer the very wicked question, which is, how do you simultaneously lower the cost of healthcare, improve the quality, make it safer, don't kill people. I mean, I even say it that directly, and treat patients like customers as opposed to like patients, and don't have to turn around and readmit them because you didn't do everything you needed to do. And so we had all kinds of technologies and services. We helped hospitals buy their supplies together, 60 billion worth of supplies together, to try to lower that cost. But I always came back to, is what we're doing improving one of those 6 dimensions of healthcare? And is it something that I fundamentally believed it had to be transformed from the inside? Now, I've been there 18 years, and obviously it's not fully transformed yet. And we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to have turned over the reins to the current leader of Premier, and Premier will be doing that work for many years to come, I think. But that's what drove me.
I want to build upon what you said from the inside out, because you have a personal and professional philosophy that life is short and live in the moment. And you have some really powerful personal stories that I'd love for you to share.
Yeah, I actually do think life is very short. Nobody in my family's lived past 75. I'm a big believer in genetic DNA makeup. I've already lost both parents and 2 siblings. And so to me, you only get one life, and it's complicated and it's short. And it's funny, a lot of people focus on the big moments in life. And I actually think there are so many small moments that if you optimize those small moments, you could make a real difference. And I think it's really easy today to multitask, not really pay attention, do 12 things at the same time. And so I adopted this philosophy of, I'm going to be where my feet are. If I have a bad meeting at 9 a.m., I'm not going to carry that emotion into 10 a.m. I'm going to start over. If I have a car ride with a brand new staff person or consultant, I'm not going to be on the phone doing conference calls. I'm going to talk to that person. If I'm with my kids in a movie, I'm watching the movie. And so I just adopted this philosophy of be where you are, fully commit, try not to distract yourself with other things. I had little games I played on myself, like when I'd leave my office, I would visualize the office door closing. And I would tell myself, you can't open that door until X time, or whatever. And so I just tried really hard to savor every moment, the big ones and the little ones. Play paper football at dinner with the 9-year-old kid, while you're at dinner with the 9-year-old kid. So it really was little things. It was airplane rides. It was car rides. It was rehearsing with a person who was giving their first big speech. It was, going to the funeral of somebody, even though you didn't really know the family, you only knew them, and they were an employee. It's amazing the notes I got when I retired. I mean, I got a 3-page letter from a guy telling me about all the little things I had done in his career to make a difference. And I honestly didn't even remember those things.
Wow.
And so I think, to me, it's because I actually think you can learn from everybody and everything. You can learn from a song. You can learn from the movie Frozen. That Let It Go song changed my life.
That's great.
You can learn from brand new staff people. You can learn from the person that's been there 40 years. You can learn from a customer. You can learn from a supplier. You can learn from government people. I mean, so I just love living in the moment. It's actually fun. It's fun.
Yeah, I'll often say when I'm doing coaching or even doing interviews is I remind people like, look where we are. Look what we get to do. How lucky we are. Like just in this moment, we all have stuff we're struggling with, but like here we are, we're in this moment, we're alive. We got to wake up today. Like we got to be here and be in this moment. I think it's really, really important to just have that level of consciousness.
Yeah.
So I want to fast forward to today. You retired from Premier. I am going to challenge you to just sit back for a second. And I want you to think of very first thing that comes to mind, like your greatest high and your lowest low over your 40-year span.
Oh, God,
It could even be a feeling. It could be something that happened that your brain immediately goes to.
Well, the thing my brain immediately goes to is that when I retired, my 3 kids and their spouses, and we're in a virtual COVID world, but they came and watched me give my last speech. And it's like I have 3 great kids and they're, happy, healthy, and self-sufficient. And I did good because all my life I wasn't sure whether there were too many sacrifices with career and family. You worry your kids won't turn out well. And so probably that was it. Like they're good. And I love them and they love me. And as hard as I worked and as much as I traveled, it still worked. So that's the one that comes to mind. I mean, I could say taking Premier public, and I could say transforming healthcare and making a difference there. And I could say running those other divisions that were not healthcare that gave me my first shot. But at the end of the day, it's my kids, me being proud of them being proud of me, them getting to see what I did, why I spent all those 40 years, because we didn't talk about it a lot for the 40 years, because I always wanted it to be about them, not about that. So that's probably the high. The lows now, let me just tell you, girl, the things I have done that I should have been fired for, or things that happened to me. I mean, one time I tell this story all the time. We had this rating system at EY. You rated all your partners, and all the staff. And they had a 1 to 5 rating. The 5s were the superstars. The 1s were the people you wanted to counsel out. But 80% of the people were 3s.
Mm.
And I said, we did all that. We had it all done. And I sent an email to my partners and said, I've attached the, final performance ratings. And I really want you to focus on the 4s and 5s because they are the future of the company. And so I sent that email out or I had my assistant send that email out, and I get on an airplane, my phone rings, I answer the phone, and the person on the phone says, "Hi, Susan, I just wanted you to know this is so-and-so, one of your 3s. And I just want to understand why you don't appreciate our contribution." At lowest moment of my career, because I realized that email that I sent, I thought to partners, had gone to the entire region and all the people in it with their names and their ratings and their salaries. So
my God.
Screws up. It was just an accident. Everybody screws up, but it forced me to figure out what I was going to do. I decided to call each and every person and apologize first, and then talk to them about their careers and about what they wanted to do, what they wanted to be. And it made me realize the 3s are in fact as important, made more important than the 4s and 5s, because they're the core of what happens in a company. So anyway, that was probably my greatest low. But I did walk in on a CEO in the restroom in his private bathroom. That was a low. I actually used a slang term that deeply offended a customer one time. That was a low. I had a customer throw my report in the air one time and tell me that I told him what he wanted to hear, not what he needed to know. And so these are all notes to self. It's like note to self. Be very careful when you get comfortable with a customer and you start using slang. Tell customers what they need to hear and need to know, not what you think they want. Just all kinds of, lots of lows and lots of highs. And I think you learn from both.
Yeah. Wow. Those are great stories, Susan.
I got some story. I got some good stories.
So my last question is, think about your legacy. And I'd love for you to share what you'd like for people to be saying about you, personally and professionally. I'm a big believer in figuring out what you're meant to be, what you're meant to do, what you're on this planet to do and be. And so I guess, and again, mine's all blended one life, not two separate kind of legacies. I think I was meant to be a mom and a grandmom. I think I was meant to learn healthcare from E&Y. I think I was meant to transform healthcare from the inside through Premier or Try. I think maybe I'm now meant to help other public and private companies, given my experiences. And I think that I am meant to do something charitable or philanthropic, but I haven't figured it out yet. I've done a lot of different charitable and philanthropic things, but I haven't figured out that big thing maybe I'm meant to do. And I want people to say she made a difference. She made a difference in her kids' lives, her family's lives. She made a difference in healthcare. She made a difference in her friends' lives. And she cherished every moment of life. That for me, if somebody walks away and says she really did live in the moment, she really did cherish every moment, and she made a difference with those moments, that would be kind of my legacy.
And I would add real, heartfelt, smart, insightful, and incredible advice that came from this conversation. Susan, I'm so grateful to have met you and to have this conversation that I get to share with my community.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been fun, really fun. I am all about everything we can all do to help each other. You know, Madeleine Albright says there's a place in hell for women who don't help other women. And I think we need to do more. We need to help each other. We really need to just help each other. So happy to do it.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeanie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.